We have an august panel today, and our first speaker is Ubaldo Garcia. He's 35 years old, and he was raised in a large family, as he says, in the seedy side of Stockton, California. And as a former gang member, Ubaldo is here to tell us about how racism has played a formative part in his life, both in California and in Portland. And this, I want you to know, this is his first time speaking to such a large group, so I want you to be really supportive. Thank you.
Hello. I got a deep voice, so I'm kind of proud to be here. I'm kind of nervous, but I'll survive. I'm a survivor, so. I just want to tell you guys how I got to this point right here where I'm at, speaking to you guys. It's been a long road. Me growing up in Stockton, being a gang member is, you know, you see a lot of things, you do a lot of things that some of you guys here probably never do in your lives. So I'm here. I'm trying to just change somebody's life because these dialogues I go to, they've changed my life. So hopefully somebody here, like, he could do it, I could do it. So, being, you know, high school, terrible high school. It was always, I always had to stick to myself, to the Mexicans, to the Latinos. I couldn't talk to the blacks or the Asians or the whites. That's where I kind of like seen more of the racial, but I kind of like put it to the side because I still knew I could still talk to the friends of other colors. So, but in high school, it was real difficult for me. Didn't finish high school, dropped out. I dropped out because of that, and a lot of teachers put me down. So I, you know, didn't care for them, so I didn't really care for school. So, and then I started to work. I was trying to get a job, and got treated just like high school. Always, it's not good when you get not good jobs when people go for education and all that. But for me, I took the wrong route, so I got to deal with it. But I worked for a while. Don't get me wrong. I worked for a little bit, paid taxes. But after a while, with all that stuff, with the white bosses I had to deal with, always yelling at me, putting me down, giving me the shitty jobs. And then I see my friend telling me, Waldo, hell with the job. Come and work out in the streets, sell drugs. It's all right. So he showed me a big wad of money. That's what got me going. I just seen that big wad, a lot of money, a lot of money. And I didn't have to pay taxes. So I started selling drugs, and it's been a long road for me when I was selling dope. I started at a very young age. I kind of started in high school, but it wasn't really into it until I got out of high school. And I don't like talking about it, but but what got me selling drugs is because I wanted to sell to the white folks, to the white people, for all the stuff that they used to. The teachers, because teachers and principals, and they used to come and buy dope from me. So that's the only way I could say I could selling drugs, ruin their lives. They ruin your life. So that's what I did for a while. Not a while, but for a long time. I did it from '88 to '05. It's a long time. Kind of like the smart one in the group where I was growing up. So I can't really say, I got to knock on wood because I've never been to prison. I was can't say the smart one, but I was street smart. I always watched my back, always did it right. So that's what, got me through. I've seen a lot of friends. I ruined a lot of people's families. Stuff like that. At that time, I didn't have no heart. I was just like, hell with it, So, so that's, I'm trying to hurry up because I only got 15 minutes. So, and then my mom tells me to come move to Portland. And I'm telling my mom, are you serious? And she's like, come, my mom, she's real old school. She has, it's my mama. She knows. She knows what I was going through. And she didn't know what I was doing, but she knew because I didn't get it. I had no job. So she wanted to know how was I paying my phone bill and stuff like that, and going to parties and stuff like that. So she knew she knew a little something. And she just kept telling me that she didn't want to see me die in the streets. So that's why I moved to Portland, so I could be with my mom. So I moved to Portland, and Portland is cool. Don't get me wrong, it's nice out here, but it's the inside of Portland. It's just real. Well, when I moved here to Portland, I seen a lot of stuff here too. Here in Portland, I've been racial profiled here. I've been followed at stores. Been taken from waiters, no water. From when you go eat at a restaurant, they like forget who you are at the table. I guess they don't want my money, so I was seeing that, but it was more, whatever. I'm here in Portland anyways with my mom. So, and then I finally met Karen, my friend Karen. When I met Karen, I was like, "Are you serious?" She's white, everybody. So when I first met Karen, I met her off my mom. She came not visit my mom, but she was doing campaigns for Obama, and she would come knock on my mom's door, and my mom finally answered the door, but she didn't trust Karen, so. And then I finally moved here, and I meet Karen, and I'm like, "Oh shit, Karen, hey, what's up?" And she's telling me, what she's done in the past, and and this is Martin Luther King Day, so I kind of took it like, all right, she's down for the cause, like to say. So I kind of, the more I met Karen, the more, because I don't trust white people. When I was growing in the neighborhood, I just didn't. I had friends that were white, but they so dope with me and everything, so I could trust them. But the outside people that were not in our circle, couldn't trust them. And when I met Karen, she told me what's going on, and I was telling her what's going on here in Portland, how I get treated. And she was like, "Oh." So I started finding out more. Portland was, I can't say it's a racist city, but inside it is. not the outside. The outside is pretty and all that, but the inside is real city. So, and then Karen asked me one time. She goes, "Waldo, would you want to go to these Friday night dialogue?" And I'm like, "Are you?" And I thought it was just like just people showing up or whatever. I just didn't really. And then because Karen's white and she's inviting me, so I thought it was a lot of white people there. And I thought I was the only Mexican there, so I kind of I wasn't gonna say no, but I was like, you know what, just go for it. What are they gonna do? What are they gonna do? What they already done already? So I went, met. That's where when I first went to the dialogue, the Friday night dialogue, seeing the people talk about Portland, and I was like, okay, it's private. I started thinking, okay, I could open up a little bit. I could tell them the real side of the life, I guess. Because you guys all, I mean, not all you guys, but some of you guys here live average lives, I guess, above average. So I was telling myself, like, man, and then I kept thinking when I was sleeping, I was like, man, what are you doing, Waldo? You can't go to these dialogues. And I was like, well, you gotta do it. I gotta go see what's going on. So I went. I opened up. That's why my heart opened. I let it. Some of you guys are here. When they see me cry, to me, I'm not alone. So, regardless if they're white or not, but they're there. So, going to the dialogues, it means a lot to me. From my background, I don't associate with that kind of side. This is everything. Even me standing here talking to you guys it's all new to me. To me, it's priceless. Me sitting here now, talking to you guys. So. I can't name all the people I met at the dialogues, or just probably a few, but I don't want to leave nobody out. You guys are like family. You guys are out there. You guys are my family. Regardless if we don't talk or nothing like that, or we don't associate all the time, every day, regardless, I see you guys every month. Every the 14th here, the other dialogues. You guys are family. Family means a lot to me. And I just want to it's a long road for me to come. There's times I want to go back to what I was doing before, because I still struggle, but I still come here. But I tell myself, you can't go back, Waldo. You can't. Some of you, people tell me don't never give up. I'm not giving up, regardless what I go through. Still be here. I'm still alive. See my life pass me hella times. I've been, there's another thing too, I've been racial profiled here too. So it was, I think last month, I'm gonna tell you a little thing about here too. It was somewhere, I think last month or the last one, somebody asked me, where was I born at? I home. I was born in Fort Worth, Texas. And it's like, what? American baby, huh? So, I mean, that when she said that, kind of like, what, if I was born in Mexico, with a Mexican baby, or, I mean, it's been stuck, it stays with me. What white people say to me of wrong, or they don't know what they're saying, it stays with me. I would always remember your face. It's a long time. I woke up this morning and I was telling myself, Waldo, what are you doing? I'm going to this race talk later on. I mean, this is me talking to myself in my bed, so kind of like, you know, and then it's you know, it's my friend's gonna take a real kick out of this when I go back and tell him, you know, what I'm doing in Portland. Because I took my friend Karen back to Stockton, and I showed her around, and I told them what I do, and they were like, "Hey, Waldo's, he's on the other side." But I tell them it's not like that. You guys will always be my friends, regardless of what you guys do. But I'm not for it. But I can't stop them. I can only tell them no. But eventually they're gonna sit there and realize they're gonna say, "Whoa, did it? I could do it." I mean, a lot of people here, my friends, I've seen friends that changed their lives too, and but not like Waldo, where I come and talk race and me grow. I mean, because I want to make Portland my home. I mean, it is my home right now, but it's like I guess I gotta fight harder, I guess, so that's why I come to these, that's why I'm here talking to you guys. It's one more thing before I go. There's 5 things I always tell myself, or I remember myself saying. It's always family. You always think about family, regardless if you guys are fighting or whatever. You guys are everybody's family, regardless. If you guys don't even talk or whatever, family. Be real. You gotta be real. I'm always real here. I'm not putting no sour cream on top or nothing. So this is real talk. Don't give up to the people that come to these classes or dialogues or race talks. Listen with your heart and mind, like as I always do. The first dialogue class, I opened my heart and my mind. So, and forgive. Wow. I'm always forgiving, trying to forgive the people I've hurt and the people that racial profile me. So, and I've forgotten I don't like using white folks, but I mean, I can't, I mean, there's no other word I could use. Let's just, keep it going. I forgive all the people here in Portland that racial profile me, so I forgive them, regardless if they're not here or not. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I got one of those. Your first time out, doesn't hit a home run, fella. Bases loaded. Well, I would like for the people who are part of the Friday night dialogue and who have been through the United to Understand Racism dialogues to please stand. Thank you. These are the people that Ubaldo is talking about are his family. And it's real important. These you can see these dialogues make a difference. They do make a difference, and so it'll make a difference in your life too. You might not have the road to travel that Ubaldo has traveled, but it will make a difference in your life. These next three speakers happen to have what I call the second most important job in the world. The first most important, many of you do, and some of you do the second one too. The first most important is being a parent. The second most important is being a teacher. I think that what we as educators do is extremely important. But what you as parents do is even more important, because you're the first role model that your children have. And the most important one. I don't care how many teachers they have. How many of you remember your teachers, the names of your teachers? I'm one of those. Good. All the teachers you had? How many remember all your teachers in elementary school? Okay, there's a few of us here. Wait, that's pretty good. I hope all of my kids remember my name except for one class when I taught first grade. God, I hope they forget me. Oh, that was torture. I was not good. I was not good. Our next speaker is Dr. Perla Rodriguez, and she's a first-generation Chicana. I like you used that, okay. I used to work for a Chicano community organization in Sacramento, California, and it's not a word that people use often here anymore. Her parents are both from Mexico. Perla was born and raised in Oregon and proudly states that she is the product of both Head Start programs and public schools. Perla is currently the principal of Cornelius Elementary School in Forest Grove School District. And I'm especially excited and proud for Perla because I went to Pacific University in Forest Grove, and I remember when the only person of color I saw on that road was me. And that was 40 years ago when I graduated, 41 now, I guess. But I'm extremely excited that Perla is there and representing. I give you Dr. Perla Rodriguez.
Oh, great.
I need to time myself because I'll just talk and talk and talk. Okay, well, thank you for having me. My name is Perla. I am in the Forest Grove School District. I'm a principal at an elementary school, and things have definitely changed demographically. My school is about 87% Latino students now. So there are a couple more than just one or two of us driving on the streets now out there. I was born in Eastern Oregon, in Ontario, and both of my parents are from Mexico. So I've often said I was raised in Mexico, but it was in Ontario, Oregon. Because when you're a kid in your environment, that's all you know. And all my parents knew was what they knew from when they were young. And my upbringing was very much, it was Mexican. We ate Mexican food, that's all we knew. We only spoke Spanish. We celebrated the Mexican traditions. And the only exception, the only difference between me and my cousins from Mexico, of course, was that I was in Oregon. It wasn't until I started school that I kind of started realizing that my experiences were really different from other kids. You know, when you're a kid, you think everyone eats, you know, tortillas with every meal. Everyone speaks Spanish and has these traditions. When you start school and you're a person of color, it doesn't take a whole long time to figure out that there is a majority culture that we're not part of. And it's sometimes overt, and it's oftentimes, more often than not, it's really subtle. It's the little things that in my experience, people of the majority culture really don't even realize that is glaring to people of color. The most obvious difference, of course, was language, starting school, and we spoke Spanish, and my parents were very proud of being Mexican. So I had an older brother, and he probably took the brunt of the challenge of being bilingual, bicultural, because he had to do it first. In our home, my parents didn't want us to speak English because they wanted us to be bilingual. And my mom would say, they're going to learn English because we're in the United States. At home, you speak Spanish. And so there was this, at school I could speak English. I had to speak English and learn English, but at home it was Spanish. For me, it was a little easier because I had my older brother who would help kind of navigate and make it easier for me. And the challenges of a different school experience for me culturally were made easier because my parents really did understand the importance of instilling in us this great pride for who we were. That's something that, in my experience, is really generational, because for my parents, they were very proud of this Mexican-ness because that's what they knew. So when you're now talking about 4, 5, 6 generations, it's harder to instill that real proud, being proud in being Mexican, because a lot of our kids, they've never been to Mexico. You know what I mean? They have quinceañeras and they eat enchiladas, but they've never been to Mexico. That's not a reality. So to talk about being proud and being Mexican, it's a greater challenge the further removed you are from that first culture. There's a researcher, I love her work, Ángela Valenzuela, and Dr. Valenzuela talks a lot about that. She wrote this book called Subtractive Schooling, and her theory is that kids, especially minority kids, Mexican kids, come to school with all of these assets, and the longer we keep them in our schools, the more we are able to subtract all of these assets. Like, we do a really good job of stripping them of all these assets. And her research says we're not so much worried about our new immigrant kids, because the fact is, if we can get them English, oftentimes that group of kids are doing fine. Our kids that are dropping out of schools in record numbers are our American 3rd, 4th, 5th generation Chicano kids. Those are the kids that we're losing. One of the things Valenzuela talks about in her research is the importance of role models. And she says, for a lot of our US-born Chicano kids, we can tell them, honey, you can do anything you want when you grow up, But they look around and they don't see people that look like them. That is very much the case in Oregon, I have found. So if we have students in my school that say, when I grow up, I want to be an animal doctor, I would give anything to be able to go and find a Chicana veterinarian to bring to her and say, look, mija, you can do it, right? But we don't have that. That's a real deficit. Valenzuela's research says that that's why our immigrant kids, and I think that's why, like my parents, even if they were poor in Mexico, the judge in their town, the police in their town, the lawyers, all were Mexican. So it wasn't that far of a stretch to picture your child doing these things, because everyone that they knew did it. I don't know if that makes sense. So for us in our school, we talk a lot, we think a lot about, it's easy to say, you can do it, and we know you can, but for our kids, really, who are their role models? And in Oregon, this becomes a greater challenge to find successful people of color that the kids can really, truly relate to. Then, of course, as we grow up, my friend, God knows who's over here, my friend and mentor, so I have to call him out, because he, I think, was supposed to be on this panel, and traded us out for him. So we're going to make sure to embarrass him nonetheless. That's right. Well, Carlos and I have talked about what we call the bottom line. And we always say, when something happens, I'll say, can you believe that? And Carlos will say, it's the bottom line. And, what we've coined the bottom line is that, we are people of color. We are of a minority culture in the United States. So we have a bottom line. It doesn't matter how many degrees I have. For a lot of people, I'm Mexican, and that's it. And that's it. And it doesn't matter if I have a PhD, if I have 10 PhDs, because you're still, that's the bottom line. And we're treated differently because of, it's just the way it is. And it's not to say, I want to say, but we can change it. And I believe that we can change it. I do. I'm hopeful. But at the end of the day, I think we do kids an injustice to tell them that that's not how it is, because that is how it is, right? So we see it all the time. So in our building, in my school, we have a 2-way bilingual immersion program. And there are these games that you have to play because of these bottom lines. So, for example, when the school board wants a report about our 2-way, you better believe I'm bringing blonde hair, blue-eyed Mackenzie to the school board meeting, to speak in Spanish, and then everyone is like, oh my God, how do I sign my kid up? And all the Mexican kids who are just fluent in both languages, it's just like they're supposed to be, right? Or when people start questioning things about language, I always joke and say, just tell them that our bilingual program is English and French. And they'll love it. They'll love it. And they'll leave us alone, right? Because there's politics in the work that we do. And that's that bottom line. The bottom line is it's Spanish that serves the Mexicans in the United States, and that carries a certain connotation that just does. It just does. In this work with racism, I'm always the most interested in that subtle racism. You know, the real overt stuff, you get used to it. You know, it's no surprise when, you know, I've been like at Macy's with my girlfriend shopping, and they'll take out a card, and great, and then when I take out mine, I need to see your ID. It's like, really? You know, but that's the overt stuff that you just think, that's called Tuesday. Right? If you're a person of color, you know, it is what it is. For me, I'm always more interested in the racism that people of the majority culture really, truly don't even realize that they're doing. I don't know why, it fascinates me a little more. So an example, God, I love this story too. I had this woman come and talk to me. She was looking for a curriculum. So she came from her church, right? And she said through her church, they were going to start offering ESL classes for families. They were going to start teaching them English after church. I mean, this woman could not have had a bigger heart or better intentions, right? So she's saying, do you have curriculum? And I'm kind of saying, well, you could try this or go to this place. And at the end, I said, this is really nice. I mean, I'm very impressed that your church is, you know, on top of everything else, you're going to start offering free English classes to the families of your church. That's awesome. She says, well, this year in our parish, we're really focused on the 3 H's. And I said, the 3 H's? Yeah. Well, what is that? She said, we're focused on the homeless, the HIVs, and the Hispanics. You know, I was like, what? Where do you even start? You know what I'm saying? That kind of racism is the kind that I'm fascinated in kind of trying to name it and attack it and prepare our kids for it. Because this woman clearly was not a Nazi, you know what I'm saying? She wasn't there with the Minutemen trying to send us all back to Mexico, you know? Her heart could have been, and I kept thinking, I don't think you're supposed to call people the HIVs either. You know what I mean? Like, that's not cool. And so I'm thinking, how do I not, like, put her in check? Because I know that her heart is in the right place. So I'm saying, you know, well, I'm Hispanic, but I don't need help from your church. No, you know what I mean. No. And so it's kind of that probing. That's the stuff that fascinates me in this work and that concerns me for our kids. If they're not in an environment that is just keeping it real with them. I like what our first speaker said about keep it real. I think a lot of times we feel that kids aren't ready and we want to protect them, and we're not doing them any favors, because when they go out to the real world, they figure it out really quickly. I think there's this balance that we need to have with children, and you know, the two pieces of it is on one side being very honest about the fact that you are a person of color in the United States. My mom used to tell us, you guys need to do everything twice as good, because they're always going to think that you're dumb. She would tell me, Bedla, you're double screwed because you're a woman. On top of the fact that you're Mexican, you're female, you need to do it 3 times as good. Your brother, at least, is a guy. He's a man. He needs to do it 2 times, you 3 times. That was true. That was true. And we did have to do things twice as hard. And thank God that we were raised with this resiliency of do it. And she would tell us, this is why. You know, she didn't hide that from us. So building resiliency and understanding it is what it is. You know, I have kids, we've all experienced interactions with people of color who will then take it to the extreme where everything's because of their color. That's not healthy for our students either. I mean, I'll tell my 17-year-old, Nico, bring me your laundry from upstairs. And he'll yell down, why? Because I'm brown? You know what I mean? It's like, no, shut up. Because it can become, I'm going to be honest, it can become a convenient excuse. And then, you start thinking, am I making excuses? Am I going crazy? Was that racist? Was it not? Being a person of color in the United States and in a state like Oregon is hard. I think what we do is have that balance of, this is what it's really like. I'm going to be honest. You're going to have to work harder, man, because people are going to think that you're a certain way because you're Mexican. So your job is to prove them wrong. And then we build a lot of supports for our kids. My daughter just started 7th grade this year. And first day of school, she came home and I said, Mija, give me all your teachers' names. And my 17-year-old said, you know what mom does, right? And she said, no. She goes, she emails all your teachers on the first day. And so she said, how embarrassing, are you gonna do that? And I said, hell yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna email them and tell them that I'm 5 minutes away. And if you get chatty, all they have to do is email me or call me. I will go and I will embarrass you in class. And so she was like, I can't believe it, how embarrassing. So she walked out and my mom said, is that why you email them? I said, that's what I tell them in the email, but that's not why I email them. I email them because my kids have beautiful, beautiful dark skin. They have my ex-husband's last name, so they're Contreras, not Rodriguez, like me. So I said, I email the teachers because when the teachers see my kids, that deep level, 3 H's level of doing, they see my kids and see dark-skinned Mexican kids. And so I know, I picture them opening up the email and, okay. I know immediately that the teachers at that very subconscious level, their expectations of my daughter are now higher. Because they know, Dr. Valdez, wow, I picture it. And I tell my mom, that's why I email them. It's my way of saying, don't mess. Don't mess with my kids, But I don't tell my kids that. I don't tell Xochitl that, because then she'll become the, why? Because I'm brown? It's because I'm brown, Mom. No. As far as what I tell her is, you need to be right, mija. You need to, si te portas bien, si no te portas bien, 5 minutes I can be in your school. Okay. So, for us, I think in our school, within our school, we are an example. We are truly an example out in our building of schools that can change things. The secret is that you have to really actually be willing to change. So I've worked with schools from around the state and they talk about wanting to change, but it's never, I don't want to say never. In many instances, it's for the wrong reason. They'll say, we want more parent involvement, and I'll say, why? Well, it's a Title I expectation. You know what I'm saying? It's not because we believe in our gut that if parents are, if you don't have the right intentions, nothing that you do is going to work. Nothing. And so if you believe that our children are capable and that the parents are valuable and that having them on board makes our work that much easier, then you can create environments for children that they do flourish. We have very culturally specific practices in our school. We've caught heat for it. I've had people say, I can't believe you will only hire bilingual. And I've said, if 90% of this school were deaf, would you question why I'm hiring people that know how to sign? You know what I'm saying? It's about my clientele. And if they were all Russian speakers, you better believe that's what I'm hiring. It's about serving your clients. In my case, that would be our Latino students. We have programs, our two-way immersion, bilingual programs. We have a ballet folklorico. Our instructor is here, one of our teachers, Mr. Ramos. This, Manuel. Ballet folklorico. These kids are amazing, amazing. And he doesn't just say, we're going to learn a little dance. It's, we're learning this dance. It's from this part of Mexico. These are the traditional costumes. It's culture and history that begins in 2nd, 3rd grade. In our building, Dr. Seuss's birthday ain't that big a deal. But Mother's Day, watch out. Everything, the world stops revolving on Mother's Day. Dr. Seuss's birthday, not that big a deal. It's, again, meeting with our clients. So, I'm very hopeful given what I've seen in our building. For what it's worth, for the data freaks, our performance data is pretty phenomenal as well. So it's not just that everyone's touchy-feely. Last year, my school, which is the poorest school with the highest number of minority kids, outperformed every school on the state standardized test. our staff is, and don't hate us because you ain't us. Come and join. So with that, I'm going to wrap up and invite you all. We love having visitors. Our kids are used to it. Come anytime. Just email me. I don't know if they'll have an email somewhere. I'm happy sharing my email. I'll have my cards here. We love having visitors, and thank you for your interest in this very, very important work.
Thank you.
Dr. Rodriguez brought up one of my favorite thoughts, that I always tell my kids that being black and being a person of color, and I should say that I just retired, but I retired from a school where 60% of the students were Hispanic, Latino students. And I teach those kids like they're my kids. I taught in West Lynn. I taught those kids like they were my kids. I do the same thing to them that I say to the Latino students, that I say to the black students. And one of the things that I like to tell my students of color and poor children is that being a person of color is like being in a 100-meter race, except white people start at 0, that's poor white people, all the way up to plus 50, that's the wealthy. And a person of color starts back at minus 50. And you're blindfolded, one leg tied behind you, carrying a piano. And the gun goes off, and we wind up either slightly behind, even, or slightly ahead. We just know that we have to work, as she said, 3 times harder. That's just a fact of life. Is it fair? No, but it's a reality. And the reality is that we are not a minority in this world. Thanks to the Chinese, we are a majority in the world. And by the year 2040, there will be more people of color in the United States than there are white people. And as such, we need to be talking, and that's why we have race talks. Our next speaker is Mario Alba. He was born in Mexico and came to the United States at the age of 10. He's been in education 30 years as a teacher and administrator. Presently, he's working in Reynolds School District as the principal of H.B. Lee Middle School. He's one of 8 children. He's on the Teachers and Standards Practices Commission. He's a commissioner for them. And that means all the people who make up rules for the schools here in Oregon. He's the past president of the Oregon Association of Latino Administrators, OALA or OLA? OALA. And former board member of the Oregon Council for Hispanic Advancement. And for those of you who didn't know, the Hispanics or Latinos here in Oregon is not a new presence. Because before Lewis and Clark made it out this way, Oregon was part of California, which was actually, Oregon was part of Mexico. So check out your history. And as such, there is a book that was, the name of it is History of Mexicanos in Oregon by Marcela Mendoza. So check that out. Thank you, Mr. Alba.
Thank you very much. Buenas noches. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm a true teacher. What I often say is I'm a teacher on special assignment, serving as a principal, or what in the education field are known as TOSAs. So I'm a TOSA because basically I deal with all the problems and crud that comes down teachers' way and try to preserve them and serve as a filter for them so they can do that important job that they do so well. Gosh, I don't know, I'm kind of nervous, and it's this first for me because I normally don't get nervous. My name is Mario Alberto Alba Mata. I tell you my whole name because this evening I want to honor 2 important people in my life. I have many important people in my life, but probably the 2 most important are my mother and my father. So the Alba name comes from my father, the Mata name comes from my mother. And in Mexico, children are registered in the schools with their full name. Mario Alberto Alba Mata. I'm a brown man, a Mexican, mestizo descent, and I'm not afraid to say that. In fact, I'm proud of it. And it's the first I'll ever do this, so you are the first. And I carry my papers with me. You can't see it, but this is one of many Aztec calendars that I've worn throughout my life to remind me of my roots. So In the evenings when I toss and turn, which if you ask my wife, I do a lot, this tinkles and makes little funny sounds, and it's a constant reminder, not only at nighttime, but also during the day, of where I come from and the long road that I have experienced here. Once I heard, and I wish I could remember so I could give credit where credit is due. I heard someone say at a training shop or training workshop, she said, if we want to bring about social change, we must tell our stories. Think about that, that's pretty powerful. Stories have been in cultures for years. So I want to thank the young man, Ubaldo, for sharing his story. And I want to thank this organization for allowing me or providing this opportunity for me to share a story. What you see in front of you has been an evolution in my life. Born in Mexico, many experiences that I would never ever hope that my children or any of your children or grandchildren would ever experience. But nevertheless, as I told someone who I was speaking with today in my school, I was a happy boy because I didn't know that I was supposed to be sad because I was poor. That was my reality. I noted that I was slightly different than most boys, and here's a plug for uniforms. But because of uniforms, I didn't know who was rich, who was poor. I just thought we were all the same. In fact, I remember one time in being invited in first grade to my best friend at that time in elementary school, and walking up to his house, which was a gated home. Never had a clue that that kid was rich. And it still didn't dawn on me, first grade, you don't think about wealth and that. But when I went up to the door, the help, the maid or the criada, told me that I couldn't come in the front door, I had to go around the kitchen. So that was my first experience, even in Mexico, of differences of classism, not a culture, but I knew that I was different. When I was 5 years old, I had my little shoe shine box. And we were very, very poor. As I look back at my experiences growing up, again, I just shake my head because my dear mother, who passed away just a couple of years ago, doesn't even know some of the stories that she's knowing now. I remember shining shoes in a cantina at 5 years old on a Saturday night as the rancheros, the guys that were working out in the ranches, were coming in for the fandangos that weekend, and I'd be in there shining shoes and scrubbing their boots and making them shiny as I could, only to see fights break out with men who had been drinking too much over a woman, who knows over what, doesn't matter, and just ducking and being saved by a voice, usually the guy that I was shining for, don't mess with the little kid. And then getting my pay of a peso, which back then was, what, less than a dime, and running and making it home in time to say, I'm here, I'm home. I wouldn't tell my mom where I'd been. And I share that story with you because as you see me now, this is the evolution. An evolution has taken me quite a long time. I arrived in the United States at the age of 10. Couldn't speak a lick of English. I could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, mother, father, sister, brother. Because we were taught that in elementary school. So when I came in 1962 to a foreign country and walking up the long walk to an American school, 3 stories high with a basement in a small town of 500 people in Franklin, Idaho, and seeing the American flag fluttering in the wind, I thought, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? And it was January, and if you know anything about Idaho, Southeast Idaho, yeah, it was cold, it was snowy. I remember not having any ELL services or English language learner services that we now are able to enjoy in our schools. So don't interpret that the fact that I've learned somewhat how to speak English in a sink or swim mode, that is the way to do it. I'm not advocating for that. What I am advocating for is that we need to find better ways to do it, to give our children of different nationalities and languages and cultures a fighting chance to succeed in life. 8 months after I had arrived in the United States, I remember going back almost in September about this time, second week of school. You know, most kids at 4th grade kind of know the routine of what school is all about. And I remember the teacher saying, we're going to have a spelling test to see how you do on words. Okay? I had only been in the United States 8 months. That summer I learned what a bat was, I learned what a ball was, I learned what a sandwich was. And for a long time I could never ever muster the taste of peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Because for me it was a taco, go play. And the first time my neighbor swapped a taco for his sandwich, and I took a bite of that thing, white bread, it looked good. But as that bite went into my mouth and it got stuck on the top of my palate, now don't tell me you've experienced that. No glass of milk or nothing. I thought I was dying. And I look over and I'm wanting my taco back, and no, it's pretty much gone by then. But my good friend Scott Butters, who taught me a lot that summer, and I learned a lot as a young boy. It's easier to learn, as a young person, it's easier to learn the language than it is as an adult. I entered 4th grade with renewed confidence that I could do something more. Because prior to that, I often tell the story that Charlie Brown sound, wah, 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 wah. That was my teachers. Because that's all. The only time I knew that my teachers were speaking to me was when the whole class would turn around, because I would sit in the back. And they would all look and smile. And the teacher was wah, 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 wah. Me no English. And smile. And I wish that I wasn't noticed. But after 8 months, like I said, I felt confident that I could speak somewhat decent enough to get by. So when the spelling bee started, I found myself without paper. Everyone else knew the system and they were ready to go. So by the 3rd word, you know, most Mexican children are taught to be very respectful, believe it or not, because we're taught to be educated, or as we say in Spanish, educado. There's a difference between being academically educated and socially educated. The teacher was already in progress. I was afraid to interfere. But I wasn't doing my test and I got scared. So I quietly, sitting in the back again, walked up to the front of the room, and I leaned over and I said, I guess I can say her name because I think she's deceased by now. Mrs. Lowe, may I have a sheet of paper? And she says, what did you say? And I look over and the kids close to the front, they could hear. Now, granted, a bunch of farm kids, agriculture community, but by her saying to me, what did you say? I thought, orale. I impressed her. Now I got English skills. So I got the courage to say a little bit loud, may I have a sheet of paper? And she looked at me, and next thing I find myself being picked up, literally, taken down the aisle, outside the door, 3 slaps on the face, and she says, don't you ever use that. I mean, I guess all of a sudden it went, but I knew she was mad. And I cried. And I guess we still cry. To this day, I swear, I try not to say sheet of paper because I still every once in a while will mess up. So I'd rather say paper. May I have a piece of paper because that's safe. At times I wish that I wasn't noticed, and it was better when I wasn't called upon. And thanks to my good friend and colleague, but most importantly friend, Dr. Perla Rodriguez, I'd like to share a poem. It's entitled Invisible. Perhaps some of you have heard this. If I stay very still and breathe very quietly, the magic happens. I disappear, and no one sees me, and no one hears me, and no one even thinks about me, and the teacher won't call on me. It's very safe being invisible. I can't make mistakes. At least nobody sees them, so nobody laughs. This is a poem from the book, My Name is Jorge, On Both Sides of the River. That was an experience, again, that caused this evolution, if you will. Moved on from Idaho to Utah, where I did my middle school and my high school career. When I was a 9th grader, getting ready to go play, you know how when the coaches come down and talk to the middle school kids, junior high kids, and get them all pumped up for now you're going to be in high school, come and participate in activities, cheerleading, whatever. I signed up to play football, and I was the last kid to sign up on the piece of paper. See, there you go, piece of paper, it's safe. And I signed that piece of paper, and I had never played organized football except for friends in the, you know, in the parking lot or at the playground, and that was it. I didn't know much about football, but I did know one thing, that the quarterback got the chicks. So I signed up to be the quarterback. And when I handed the clipboard to my PE teacher at the time, he looked at it, he looked at me and he says, "You're gonna play football?" By then I could speak better English. I said, "Yes, I am." He says, "Mexicans don't play football." Oh, I played, and I did well. I didn't know, but I had a mentor teacher who took me under his arm, a coach who believed in me. And if you ask children, if you ask yourselves why you're here and where you are in your life, it's because somebody believed in you. And chances are it was an educator. So make sure you thank them before they pass away. In 11th grade, as one of my teachers, Mrs. Marks, my English language arts teacher, said to me, "Why don't you run for office? Why don't you run for student body president?" No clue what it was. But I did, only to be met during the campaign time in the halls by one of my coaches, assistant coach of football, and a brother to one of the kids that was also running in the elections against me, says to me, "Mario, I heard you're running for student body president." "Yes, I am." "Mexicans aren't leaders. What are you doing?" I ran, I lost, but I made a hell of a lot of friends. And I learned a lot. I tell you these stories because, again, if we're about to bring social change, or we need to create social change, we need to share our stories. And I know many of your stories are very similar to what my story is. The things that I just shared with you in brief stories are things that are happening right now in Oregon. It's no different than other states. It's happening day in, day out. So can you imagine children, parents, guardians who come into our schools with language barriers? How is that interpreted? Turn to the partner or the person next to you and just tell them how you think that's interpreted. When they don't show up to conferences, when they don't come to the school, just briefly tell them what you think.
People think that the parents don't care.
Remember, this is a dialogue.
The parents don't care. That's how I think that's how it's subtly talked about, subtly as well.
I hope you got something worthwhile. I know, this is horrible to stop you because once you get going, you don't want to stop.
That's always what I
Just like when you were kids in school.
But
One experience that I had as an administrator, third-year administrator at a high school in North Clackamas, we had racial unrest, and I was the assistant principal, and I had to deal with that. Talk about being thrown into the fire and learning. I remember sitting across my table where I was doing discipline because I was in charge of the whole school discipline plan and executing discipline. Having a young man, neo-Nazi youth, white supremacist, sitting across the table from me, angry because I was getting ready to suspend him for something he had done. And he says, I wish I could imitate his face. The only reason you're here is because you took a good white man's job. And okay. Your brain is about this big, and the monkey's brain is bigger than your brain. You have no right being in this school right now. Okay. Are you done? No, and he went on again. So finally, I said, I'm not offended because I'm educated. And I know that you know better, and someday you will. But I don't need to lay a hand on you. That's why I went to school, so I can use this. See ya. Wouldn't want to be ya. Remember that old saying? Wow, did I date myself on that one? And then another experience in a district where I suspended a student. And the parent was very supportive. In fact, she wanted him out for 10 days. I said, nah, that's a lot, because he had called the Mexican student a beaner and made fun of him. So I suspended him, and he was white. Then turning around and saying, you know what, I've talked to my kid, and that's not the way he says it happened, and that you held him hostage in your office for 6 hours, and anyway, it went on and on. But she believed him at that point, so I said, you're the one that were suspended for 10 days. I only said 3. So I kind of went in the middle and did 5 to appease you. So I brought him back to school, but that ensued with a evening meeting with her and a friend who came for support. One thing I remember about that meeting was when she sat there and, again, disagreeing with me. And I said, that's okay, we're going to disagree. I mean, he's already in school, but when she said to me, Mr. Alba, Mr. Alba, the word in the community is that you're only here for the Hispanic students. I said, really? And what do you think? Well, I'm just saying that community people think that you're here for Hispanic students. But what do you think? Well, I know what she was thinking. So then I said, following that logic, could you say then that the Hispanic parents, Latino parents that for years have been saying that in this school all we had was white principals, were they only here for white students? Is that what you're saying? Well, no. Oh, okay. So then what are you saying? Of course, she was frustrated by then, and she walked out. Don't let the tie, don't let the suit fool you, is what I often tell my students. Because of my belonging, my upbringing, I have learned that we are who we are because of the experiences that life has dealt us.
Come on.
But you know what? We can pick ourselves up. We can make a difference. And I'm proud to say that I feel that I'm making a difference in my schools that I have worked in. Because when children come, and I'll give you the story, quick story of Romeo, who just came to our school last week, and how quickly I forget, even though I've been doing this for many years. He was brought with his father who couldn't speak English. I introduced myself, got him registered, got him ready to go, and I said, your first class right now is PE. And all this was in Spanish. And he goes, where's PE? So I pointed at him and said, see this hall right here? Go all the way down. See those big doors? Go in there again. And the little boy looked up at me like this. And I remembered. Because I was about his age when I came. Mijo, come here. We call our kids mijos, mijas, my daughter, my son. It's an endearing. Mijo, come here. Let's go. I walked him down, set him down, talked to the teacher and said, new student, please take care of him. I went back, kneeled down by him, started translating for him, and then I saw another student who kind of was eavesdropping on what I was saying, and I said, hey, psst, ¿hablas español? Claro. Sure, I do. I said, would you mind sliding over and translating for him? And he says, lo conozco, Mr. Alba. I know him. He was here, came here to the States just at the end of June, before school got out. So a quick connection was made. The smile came back to the little boy's face. And today, he even high-fived me. I make a difference, and I say that with humility. And I will continue to make a difference as long as I'm breathing, and I hope they don't get rid of me or fire me, or if I pass away on my desk, you know, that's my biggest fear. But when I do, and when I go, I hope that they will say, I did my best, and you never gave up. And only something that my wife, who is here tonight, I'm glad she's here listening, because I don't think she's ever heard me do these type of talks, that she can only understand, and my daughter, I went down the road of peace. So thank you for letting me share my story. It's only one of many. And once again, if you want to bring about social change, tell your stories, because they are powerful. Thank you.
Thank you.
If it's necessary for you to leave before we finish, please fill out your evaluation form and leave it on the back table. I was sitting there listening to you, and I'm kind of a crybaby. And I just retired. And it's the first time in 60 years that I have not gone to school, or my child hasn't gone to school. And I just appreciate what you shared, because it's so important what we do as teachers. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. I thought I just did that in front of my kids. They just got so accustomed to me crying. Oh, she's crying because it's important. And after a while, they'd get to the point and they'd go, get the tissue. Get the tissue. I really do think teaching's important. And I have so many stories to match yours, that being slapped and all of those things that are just horrible. I must say, in salute to football, though, I was sharing with Dr. Lopez that I didn't know who some people were. When I was in high school, we had a a boy named Alan, what was Alan's last name? I can't remember, but now I realize, once I moved to California, I realized we knew he wasn't white, we knew he wasn't Asian, we knew he wasn't black, we didn't know what he was. So, because he was the only one in the school. And when we finally figured out when I moved to California was, oh, he was Hispanic. He's Latino, he's Mexican, hallelujah, now I know. And I realized that one of my heroes, I used to love the Los Angeles Rams, was Roman Gabriel, who was probably the first. Was Tom Flores a quarterback too?
I'm not sure if the quarterback is a coach for the Raiders.
Yeah, Tom Flores was the coach for the Raiders too. And Roman Gabriel was a fine boy. Boy was fine. But he was a good quarterback too. So anyway.
And he got the girls, I'm sure.
Oh, he'd have had me, what can I say? But he was a little grown and I was just a teenager, what can I say? Anyway, our next speaker is Dr. Alphonse Lopez Vasquez. He's the Director of Diversity and Assistant Professor at Pacific University, and I'm very thrilled that he is there because that's my alma mater. He is in charge of diversity, and I went down last week to take him some posters, and I noticed he was in a little office with a desk and a chair and no secretary, and nobody knew who he was. And that's how diversity has been relegated. And I just happened to be on the alumni board, and I'm going to raise hell. Because that's not okay. That's not okay. So, but anyway, he is a product of the war on poverty. He was born in Mexico. He was raised in West Texas, educated at the University of North Texas. My parents are from Texas, didn't tell you that. Worked in Kansas, Missouri, Texas, Nebraska, and he's been in Oregon since 1995. And about 1985, I came back from California, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong. And I finally dawned on me that this place was really white. And I hadn't realized that until I got away from it. And I went down to Salem, and I went into a 7-Eleven, and I got so excited because there were a couple of Latinos in there. And I said, oh my God, thank God I saw some Latinos, and I was so excited. I had to go back into the store and tell the guy. I know he thought I was crazy, but I said, I'm so happy you're here. And I'm so happy Dr. Lopez is here.
Gracias, thank you very much. I particularly appreciate the title doctor, because I am not a doctor. I snuck into higher education without that title, but I'll tell you a story about that later on. Mario and I share a lot of things, one of which is our close to the same age, our same experience. I came to this country when I was 10 years old, at a time when being who you were was looked at very differently, but it also became a learning experience. And I'm going to also share my story and how in the hell I got lost in higher education and what I've been doing there. I am a product of the war on poverty, but I see myself as being a survivor of the war on poverty. Because the war on poverty had one specific goal, and that was to take our identity away, to take our heritage, our culture, our language, and everything. And it was creating a negative perspective on people like me. And when I was in the 8th grade in a school named Tornillo, Texas, which, for those of you who are not bilingual, translates to Screw, Texas. That's the reason why I haven't gone back to Tornillo, Texas. I always liked to read, enjoyed going to the library. Oftentimes I was the only one in the library. My school was 99.9 Mexican American, Chicanos all the way. And the school had a very strong commitment to keep us happy long enough to go to school, to learn English, to learn enough about how to live so that we could get along with the white bosses, so that we can maybe move to El Paso to work with one of the assembly operations. And it was a known fact that the educators treated us like that. In my years of K-12 education, I didn't have a single Hispanic teacher, much less a principal or an assistant principal. I had a couple of teachers who saw something in me, But I think it was my athletic ability, like Mario's athletic ability. In high school, I played football. I was a defensive safety and an offensive center, and every now and then I snuck to the quarterback. I never got the girls though, so something went wrong there. I played tennis. I played golf. I mean, how more bourgeois can you get? But going back to the book that I found, which I pulled it down from the bookshelves because it was a beautiful, shiny cover. And when I pulled it down, I saw the title, which meant nothing to me. And the title of the book was Discrimination, the Glass House of Prejudice. Think about that. Discrimination, the Glass House of Prejudice, 8th grade. And I started going through the book, and it was a fairly advanced reading, but I got the essence of what that book was all about. Discrimination, the Glass House of Prejudice. So I made it a point to read the book and to understand what the book was all about. A teacher saw me reading that book. She just saw me reading, period, and she liked the idea that I was reading something constructive. And she said, "Why that book?" I said, "The topic and the title of the book was interesting. I didn't confess that it was the cover, that it was so shiny and pretty, that I liked." And then she said, "What is the book all about?" And so I gave her my version. And she asked me, "Would you consider giving a 5-minute summary to your peers in the class about that book?" And I did. And I found out that I had my classmates in attention, and that they were not making fun of me, accent and all. I have a story about the SH and EET word. I wanted to buy a cake for a celebration for a colleague, and it became an SHIT cake. And nobody wanted to partake of the party that I was going to be involved. But then, reading that book, summarizing the book, opened one door, and the door was to speak in public. And at that time, the teacher introduced me to persuasive speaking as one of the interscholastic league competitions. So I became the first Mexican American to participate in interscholastic league speaking. And as a freshman, I won first place in my district on the topic. Accent and all, I made my speech, and that sort of introduced me to the life experience. Then I began to understand discrimination, because then I began to read about the school that I had gone to. And a local community person had written a book about the story of the little pueblito, the little town called Tornillo, Texas. Has anybody been by Tornillo, Texas? Shame on you. Andale vato. And when she wrote that story about Tornillo, Texas, she talked about the Mexicans who were coming in to do the work in the fields. And so I took me then, when I was a sophomore in high school, that's when the War on Poverty programs really took off, and the community action projects got started. And there was a guy who had come to the school to provide opportunities for us in school to get jobs. And somehow, somewhere, he ran into my sister, who was at that time the secretary for the superintendent. And he laid an eye on her. Y le gustó, he liked her. So he wanted to make a move on her. And to get closer to her, he offered me a job. Mañoso vato. Sí, mañoso. And so he offered me a job as a peer counselor for the summer program that they were going to be having for the kids in the neighborhoods. And up until this time, I had been working in the fields with my dad. After school, before school, during the summer, you name it, we did it all. I was 12 years old, I was already driving the cotton picking machine. I was already driving the tractors in the field, feeling good, manejando así. I tell the story to my kids about the times that I got high. We know that Baldo got high. Anybody willing to confess? How many of you have gotten high? Good. I got high 3 times. And the first time that I got high was when I was driving the tractor down the highway. And Teresita's parents saw me, and I liked Teresita. She never liked me, but that's okay. And man, I felt so good, driving the tractor. Como un hombre, like a real man, like a macho man that my father wanted me to be. Yeah. So I got high that time. My second high was when I flew for the first time. And I flew not only a little, avioncito, a little plane, but I flew from El Paso, Texas, to Dallas, Texas, to New York City, on my way to Yale University. What a high. My third high was when I was valedictorian in the little high school where I read the book, Discrimination, Aggression, and Prejudice. And I got high when I was up there making my speech. But when I was going to that first job outside of the cotton fields, I was spiffy looking, not as spiffy looking as I am right now, because right now I'm wearing my best Macy outfit right now. Back then, era una camisa blanca, white shirt from Cresses. Or Kmart, no sé cuál era. And when I was walking down there on the highway, one of my dad's bosses pulled over, and he asked me, "Where are you going?" And I was so proud. Now I'm going to Fabens. What are you going to go do at Fabens? We don't need you to go do any work at our house. I said, "No, man, I'm going to be a peer counselor." I said, "Hell no, that's not what we brought you to this country for." A la chica. I stand there, not knowing what to do. I see the man take off, drive to where my father was at. And they spend some time talking. And then the man drives away. And then I saw my dad getting into the truck, came over to where I was standing, frozen in time. I said, "What did Joe tell you?" So I told him. And he asked me, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Man, I want to go to Fabens. I want to do the job." And he said, "Get in the truck." I said, "Oh shit. He's going to take me home to go change clothes to my farm working clothes." And he drove me to Fabens to my new job. How many parents in our schools today have the fortitude, the knowledge, las ganas to overcome the institution's barriers that they put, physical, social, and emotional? So that became, to me, an opportunity to try to do a difference, to try to do good. I worked directing the first bilingual education program in the state of Kansas back in 1974. Fresh out of college. I got my bachelor's degree in 2.5 years, a master's degree in 1.5 years later. That's what happened when you go to Yale University. Te crees chingón. You think the big caca. And you start doing good stuff. So it was the ego that got me there. Going into higher education was, to me, probably the most challenging part, because I have always worked in the field of social justice and equity. And higher education is the ultimate perpetrator of the injustices that have been recorded in history. It is higher education that produced the research that gave racism the capital R of racism. It was a research of scholars, sociologists, psychologists, social scientists who gave the labels by which society has seen people of color. Higher education has 3 functions: to teach, to research, and to serve. The teaching and the research and the service that they have done for too long has been, unfortunately, one of the means and the vehicles by which oppression has done. Changing that system can change the way that we see each other. For better or for worse, we're beginning to see that the demographics of this country are going to be such that unless we change the quality of education, unless we change the quality of health, unless we change the social structure, the social services of our community, our country will not be what it is today. It will continue to decline because we are reaching that critical phase demographically of the browning of America, i.e. people of color becoming majority, and the graying of America, the aging of the white population. And unless we create that balance, yeah, you like that one. Yeah. I'm joining you, my friend. A little bit more stuff up here than you do, but it's graying on me. So we need to develop a process of reconciling that past. And that reconciliation has to happen, not only through the discussions that we're having here, and I thank you, and I love you for being here. I have a banner that I keep in my office that was given to me in 1975 by a group of third grade students that says, it's a Snoopy banner. And Snoopy and I are favorites. We do some buddies. And it says, hey, I like you, is that okay? And so I like you for being here, for taking the time on this beautiful first fall day in the summer, after 5 days of summer in Oregon, and being here to engage in a dialogue, a courageous discussion on the process. But I want to suggest to us that we need to take this conversation to higher education. I've had worse offices. I have had other experiences in higher education. But the bottom line is that we need to make a change at that environment. We need to make a change in our faith communities to make the difference in changing what it is. But most importantly, we need to create those natural highs for the students of color, children from disadvantaged backgrounds, who are now living an environment that is not conducive to feeling good, to feeling natural highs. And anybody is going to find a high. And unfortunately, the high for many of our kids is not the normal, natural high. So I am proposing that we continue the process to engage in those conversations. I've been noticing that little finger going up. And it's a very sweet finger, I like it too. And thank you very much for that. I am burned out. I'm going to share a story. I have 2 children. I have one who is a college professor, like her dad. She's a musician. She played for Luciano Pavarotti. She's a tenure professor, something that I am not. She's doing good, and I'm very proud of her. I have a son who got caught in that world that Baldo talked about. He's on his 6th year of an 8-year sentence. And so, hey, I'm an educator. Mother is an educator. Mom and dad have been fighting for social justice. And still, his son is there. Pensemos, let's think about the many other families whose cognitive understanding of the world is much more challenging. The social conditions that they live under is much more challenging. So let's devote the time to make a difference. There is a lesson that I learned from watching the movie Stand and Deliver. And the lesson is when Jaime Escalante was getting the kids to understand calculus. And he used the fundamental algebraic equation, which is a negative times a negative equals a negative times a negative equals a positive. The metaphor that he used was, think about going to the beach, that's B-E-E-C-H, and you pick up a handful of sand. You have created that equation. The cavity that you've left behind, the little hole, you have it on your hand. When you put it back, you have created the positive. What we need to do, therefore, I feel very strongly, is that we need to respect and appreciate la cultura, the culture of communities of color, and be able to take that and learn from that. That the individualism that has become part of what we value in society. It's what's killing society. I just finished reading the book, Alone Together, and how middle-class America has become so obsessed with individualism that we have our cell phones and iPads and everything, and that's how we live. La cultura, Native American culture, African American culture, Latino culture, and the culture of the world demand family. We demand that we work together to be one. So I am challenging us to build communities, to be able to do that. And we don't need a PhD to do that. We just need corazón to do that. And to stop acting from the gut, which is where a lot of the racism has evolved. I thank you for the opportunity to be here, but I thank you for you being here.